You're listening to the Full-Time Function Musician Podcast, episode 30.
You're listening to the Full-Time Function Musician Podcast, the number one resource for growing your function musician business. If you're a solo wedding singer, part of a 12-piece luxury show band, or anything in between, and want to learn from other successful musicians, you're in the right place.
You're listening to the Full-Time Function Musician Podcast. I am your host, Jack Twiner. If this is your first time listening, then welcome. If you're a regular listener, then welcome back. This podcast is for function musicians who are looking to grow their business, maybe book some more gigs, hear some inspiring stories, and generally just learn from others who've been doing it successfully for years. So today's episode is a big one of my favorites so far, and that's because we really dive into running your band as a business. So if you're a musician, specifically a function musician, and you've made this your career, or you want to make this your career, then you by default are a business owner. Maybe you don't want to be a business owner, but if you would rather work for yourself than someone else, then that's the way it is. If you want to have a successful business, then you really need to take this stuff seriously. So I'd say pay attention to this one, as Ian has just so many good little nuggets of advice that could really help you. Anyway, it's quite a long one, so let's get into it. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Ian Marx. You're listening to the Full-Time Function Musician Podcast, and on today's episode, I'm joined by my new friend, Ian Marx, and we are going to be talking about making your band your business. We're going to be covering funding and investment, managing a full-time band and everything that goes into that, client management, advertising and marketing, and loads more. Ian, welcome to the podcast, man.
Good morning. Good to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one, man. Loads and loads to get through. So, yeah, man, let's start with you. Let's learn a little bit about you and your story and what's brought you to where you are today.
Sure. So where do we start? Probably at the beginning's a good place to go. So I went to BIM in Brighton and did the vocals course and had sort of plans to leave there and be an original musician and make music. And as we finished, I had a sort of cruise ship job lined up, and we were all rehearsing up in Manchester, ready to go. And sort of at the last minute, one of the band dropped out. So unfortunately, we never ended up going on that cruise ship, which is a bit sad.
That's a bummer. Did you ever get into cruises, or?
To this day, I've never been on a cruise ship. So
is that something you still would like to do, or?
Not really, no. I think
the ship has sailed, as I say.
Yeah, the ship has sailed. Also, I like the idea of being able to get off if I want to as well.
Yeah.
So I found myself back in Brighton and really was thinking, right, okay, I've got myself into the old student debt, as we all have. What's the most logical thing to do? Well, get a job in an office. So found myself working for a big corporate company. Ended up being there for 10 years as a project manager. And I was still doing music on and off in between that, like writing original stuff, set up a piano bar show. So it was a request show called The Live Lounge. So you used to have like this little book and the slips, a little bit like karaoke, but people would just put their requests in. Sometimes they would write some rude things on the slips as well, which was always fun.
Is that with them singing, the audience singing? Like?
No, so it was actually me singing, although I think a lot of the time they wanted to kind of get up and sing.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you probably know that from being in a band. That's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, there's a place like that in Reading now, I think. It might even be called the same thing, but it's a whole band set up, and I've not actually been there, but
it's like bandioki, I think it's
something like that.
Yeah. But I found, obviously, you get comfortable in a job, and then I was always sort of came from a sales background and got sort of trained up in project management and a lot of the business side of things. And then about 11 years ago, I was staring out the window on the fourth floor, thinking, what has my life come to? And I just had an epiphany, and I was like, right, I need to leave this job. So I did, just walked out. I didn't have any savings or anything. In hindsight, probably not the wisest thing to do. But actually, it led me to sort of get my feet back into music, which was always what I'd kind of planned. And I found myself interning for a company called the Songwriting Academy, and they were running courses on songwriting and the music business, and ended up becoming the digital marketing manager. So I had like the social media and the email marketing side of things covered with that. Met some amazing people, and then found myself working out in Berlin and Spain, running retreats, which was great. So I got to meet loads of other full-time musicians, and I would probably credit that for kind of accelerating my journey into music, just for being around like-minded people. So yeah, I ended up becoming the operations manager, and I was there for about 6 years, and it was a really, really enjoyable job. But obviously was itching to get back into performing. So I was doing a few bits and pieces on the side, and an old buddy from music college asked me if I would come and sing in a band that he was setting up. So one of the big music agents had put together a development plan. We won't say which one of these entertainment agents it is, but essentially it's a bit like a production line. All of the bands look the same. They want the same kind of vibe. So we had an audition lined up. So after several auditions later, we were kind of an indie pop party band. And we were kind of right up at the point to get going and get gig ready. And we got some feedback from the final audition that something wasn't quite right for them. The fit wasn't what they were looking for. So we were at the point where, really we were going to get some promo done, and we were a 5-piece at that point. And we were doing obviously pub gigs here and there. But it was always a kind of a dream to sort of make that into more of a full-time thing rather than just a sort of part-time endeavor. And yeah, I guess over time that kind of ramped up. I was co-managing it with my buddy, and I got made redundant from the Songwriting Academy. So I was gutted really, because it was kind of like a big enabler for me for music. And then I guess really just prior to COVID, we did all of the filming of the promo, we got photos done. And it was kind of evolving as it went, really. And we were just at that point where I think we were about to take off, and then the pandemic struck. And, bear in mind, we were doing probably like between maybe 2 or 4 a month at that point. So that was still kind of, all right. I mean, I wouldn't say that we were charging the right fees at that point. But COVID came along, and, in some ways it was a really incredible thing, but in a lot of ways it was just horrendous. And, for somebody like me who likes to travel and meet people, I found myself living alone in Brighton, just bored out of my mind.
Yeah.
So I ended up getting this temp job putting numbers into a spreadsheet, which for someone with ADHD is just like a slow, painful death. But during that time, I managed to clear off all of my debts I'd accrued. I managed to put some money aside for the band. And we kind of went into stasis for a bit. So I remember doing the post that said, hold tight, we're going to be coming back at some point. We don't know when, but we're coming. And I guess really I used to run every single day. So I would run for like 2 hours. It was like my little bit of freedom. But in that time, my brain was ticking over, and I was like, right, I have to come out of this on top somehow. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I was just so focused on the exit from COVID. So I thought, how can we hit the ground running at this point so that as soon as the restrictions are lifted, we can just get out there and gig? Yeah. So I thought, do you know what? I'm going to apply for everything that I possibly can. I just made templates. I wrote a plan. I was like, right, we're going to spend this on advertising. We're going to get a proper promo video done, the best venue that I can find, photography that really shows off what we can do. And, I really credit it to Help Musicians, because really, they really helped us at the point where, had they not thrown some investment our way, we would have had a very slow start from COVID. We would have been relying on the kind of work that we'd done before. But we managed to, during COVID, when it was the rule of 6, go in and film the promo, do the photography. We managed to just by numbers do it with the funding that we got from Help Musicians. And I also went, and there was a course on, LinkedIn allowed the subscription where you could basically pay, I don't know, however much a month, 20 quid a month, and it's like unlimited courses. So I just sat through the Google marketing course, 20 million coffees, just whatever I could do because it's such a dry subject. But following, obviously, the lifting of the restrictions, we were ready to go. We had the best possible start. And I guess really one of the key things that kind of helped us as well was that I bought a gazebo for the band, because I figured that the outdoor restrictions would, somehow benefit us from being able to play outside. So we bought the band castle, which is like a 3 by 4.5 meters, basically 10 that we played in. So we would take an extension reel from people's houses and do the gig in the garden. So unbeknown to me, I'd put the Google ads up, not expecting anything back from it, just, with however much charged onto it. All of a sudden, these inquiries start plopping into my inbox for like millionaires' gardens. And then, as soon as those restrictions were lifted, we were gigging week in, week out in millionaires' gardens. So we had to fully, we had our own kind of performance space, and, it was a little bit of a buzz, band with the band castle thing. It kind of worked for us. And then the post-COVID surge was just insane. We were booked every single Saturday throughout the post-COVID year. And, from going from, 2 a month up until, 8, 10, 12, it was crazy. And I think that recovery from COVID was, what really accelerated us, I would say.
It's awesome, man. There's so much to unpack in there. Firstly, COVID, there is people's good experiences and bad experiences are wild. And it's like for me personally, I just moved in with my now wife. We just moved into our first house together, so we were having a great time, just like doing up the house and stuff like that, time off work and things. But obviously, there was loads of bad stuff again with it as well. But anyway, do you think that your sort of corporate background then has really helped you pushing your running this band, giving you loads of other skills that you wouldn't have otherwise had?
100%. I think a lot of it comes down to just having a business mentality with it. And bear in mind, I wasn't managing it throughout the whole 10, 11 years that we've been doing this. I really started to take it over full time probably about 4 or 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I think the one thing I would say to anybody who wants to run a party band as a full-time business is that you have to treat it as a business. And, first and foremost, even before you think about performing and your set and your show, you have to really have, a proper plan, like a proper how to get your sales in, how to get leads. I think, probably pricing is another thing as well, is that I guess really at the beginning of it, we knew roughly what we should be pricing ourselves out around, because a lot of us were gigging musicians and depping in other bands. So that was kind of like the blueprint for what you should be charging. But I have to say, we had one client, we did one of the weddings post-COVID, and he was obviously quite drunk at this point and came over and he's like, you know what, you're pricing yourself too cheap, mate. You should be, at least 1,500 quid. I would have paid that. Ha, 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 ha. I'm mortified thinking, oh my God, I'm missing a trick here. But I'd always looked at the numbers, and, advertising is one of the biggest costs associated with running it as a band. And when you do the numbers and you look at, obviously, all the things you have to factor in, like PAT testing, public liability, rehearsals, gear, like, I mean, you're set up at the beginning to fail because of the costs associated with it. So, you know, really the pricing, I guess, just over time, I guess you can do a bit of research as well, which is one thing I did during COVID was I wanted to know what everybody else was charging. So I set up a little email address as, you know, the Kingston wedding or whatever it was. And I just went and inquired over loads of bands just to find out what they were charging. And then to my horror, I was like, oh my God, like we're really, really under, you know, the average for 4 pieces. Yeah. So I was like, I might want to put that up a little bit. So, yeah.
Scary though, isn't it?
I think it is, but do you know what's even scarier is not being able to pay your bills.
Well, yeah, and having that worst comment that you could ever receive is, I would have paid so much more for you than I have paid.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, really, if I was to reframe it, I should be flattered by that, and absolutely. And he was spot on because, you know, we'd got ridiculous amount of like 5-star reviews, so we've hit over 100 now, so we know we're doing something right.
Yeah,
it's just that I think people are afraid to charge these prices in case the client won't pay them. But the thing is that, you know, if the amount of work that goes into it and the fact that, you know, you're full-time musicians, if you ever have those conversations with the client where pricing becomes a discussion, I have no qualms in saying, well, look, these are the costs associated with it. There's 4 people in the band. We're traveling this amount of miles. You know, we have to pay for this, and this, and it's worth every single penny. But yeah, so back to your point about the business background, I think, I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's like being able to visualize the flow of how your business works is really important, because essentially it's like a conveyor belt. You have to have your leads coming in, your sales prospects, you have to sell your product to them and then provide the service. And it's kind of like, if one of those parts isn't there, your business isn't going to work. And yeah, so I think, you know, I would attribute probably, you know, just seeing how non-function bands work and how other businesses work. I came from finance, so I had always seen how they were selling financial products, and it was like, how do you translate that back to a band and make that work? So really, I you know, borrowed a lot of the methodology from that, i.e., you know, making sure that they'd got things like a press kit's really important. So when you're selling, like, let's say credit cards to people, they want to see the brochure. So it should be the same for a band. So I spent a lot of time during COVID making sure that all of our press materials were up to date. So made sure that we had a PDF that you could attach to everything, the client could download. Again, you can send it to them on WhatsApp as well, which is great. And it's 100% open rate because you can see that they've seen it, and they're more likely to digest that information in a different format.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you said it before, but like so many musicians come into this not wanting to really start a business. They just want to play music. They just want to sing. They just want to do these things, and don't really take into account that there is a business, and if you want it to be successful and not stressful, then you need to treat it as such. But that's exactly why this podcast is here, and the things that we're going to talk about today. Like,
that's one of the things that I come up against, because like I meet with lots of other band leaders regularly, because like we talk, you know, we might all be doing the same thing, but we are a community and it's a small circuit. And that's why I always find it interesting when people say to me, look, we want to do this full time. So we're going to, you know, just do a few little phone recordings and take some photos in our shirts and the thing. And it's like, but do you want to do this properly? Because you can't, if you want to obviously get the good bookings, you can't really cut corners like that. And I do think that investment is something that's not really talked about a lot. And that's one of the reasons why we've gone from, you know, 2-4 bookings a month up until, you know, sometimes 18-20. It's because of having the best possible promo that you can afford. And that does cost money. And I think people are scared to ask for that money, whether that be funding or, I put a lot of stuff through on a credit card during COVID because I believed in what we were doing so much. I knew we could do it. And it's like, do you believe in yourself that much that you would take a risk? Because business is all about risk. You have to if you want to get ahead.
Yeah, for sure, man. So you mentioned that you got some funding from somewhere. How did that come about? What did you have to do to get that?
So Help Musicians was the key funding that we applied for. I applied for it personally, but I did put the weight of the 3 other musicians in the band into that application. So my angle in was, look, actually, we could help build this economy even more so. If our bookings go up, that money that comes into the band is going to be reinvested into that kind of creative economy. So I put together a case for it, and I told them how I was going to portion the funds. So I was like, look, we want to do this really, really shiny promo video at Chalk in Brighton. We want to get the best videographer. We want to have the lighting all synced to it. We want to get new shirts for the band so that we don't look like a load of odd sods. And I think that was the main thing. It was very joined up, the application. And I think that I hear a lot, especially original musicians that have applied for funding and have been refused, and they don't ask for feedback. And I think that's a really important thing to do as well, because it's this joined up thinking that I think people don't take into consideration the wider effect of what they're doing and how many touch points of people are involved in that process. So, for example, if you're in a 4-piece band, there are 4 mouths to feed. And essentially that funding can be spread out even further into creative industry. So, for example, paying a producer to mix the promo is again feeding another mouth with that funding. I think it's having that in your mind when you're selling yourself for funding, and just being joined up with your thinking is really important.
Yeah. So, I mean, was it like essentially like a business plan that you had to give them?
Yeah, 100% business
Which
plan.
I guess is also like kind of a really nice way of starting off your thinking and making sure that you've got all these steps in your head and writing it down and making the process like digestible,
I mean, one of the things that people should probably do if they're going to be running this as a business is be doing your sort of expenses every month. So putting them into a spreadsheet, categorizing what it is so that you can see, how much you're spending on your advertising. Because if the numbers don't add up, you're operating at a loss, and, something has to give. You either have to cut something or get some more in. But yeah, I do think that's really important, is to actually have all the information together. Like, my biggest thing that I think has transformed my business is my HQ document, which I have, which is essentially, and this is again something that's available for everybody and it's free, is essentially Google Suite. So I've got a sheet set up which has got all of the dates that we're booked in. So when the client fills out their booking form, which is essentially a survey form, that information feeds directly into the HQ document. So you can just copy and paste it into the band sheet. You've got all the information there, like the venue, the timings, the special song. It's all in the same thing. And it's the same with set lists, and everything is all in this one document. One of the other things is that when you're, let's say you're approaching lots of agents because you want to get signed up and featured on their roster, you can get all of your documents added to something like Dropbox and then just link them back. So in my HQ document, I've got band biography and the link, so that you can just copy the link really, really quickly. And it's the same for like gigs. If I see like an opportunity, I've got a template in this spreadsheet. So I can just go copy, paste. Because it's automation. It's like ways of just freeing up your time so that you're doing the things that are earning you the money.
Yeah. So you mentioned there when you get a new client, does something automatically get fed in? Is that like a Zapier thing? Like, have you got an automation set up, or is it just like a copy and paste thing, as you said?
It's bloody Muggins here who does it, so it's me. I am the automation.
I mean, you could set up a Zapier thing though, for something like that, and that might take something off your hands. Like, I
mean, probably because I'm a terrible control freak, but
oh yeah,
I think a lot of it comes down to actually the tools are only as good as the process. So, for example, here is how a sale would work. Let's just use something like Google Ads, for example. So I pay maybe £300 a month to advertise on Google. So as soon as an inquiry comes in, they fill in a contact form on the website, boom, into the inbox, the information's there. I mean, you can use automation to, there's a lot of CRM things that you can do, but to be honest, it's best to see what it is and how to respond to it. But the first thing that I would do is I've got a WhatsApp business number set up for the band. So they have to put their mobile number on the form. I've got their mobile number. Why aren't I having a conversation with them? So the first thing I would do is send them a WhatsApp with the PDF about the band, template ready to go. Hi, congratulations, blah, 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 blah. We are a band. We do this, 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 and this. Here's our promo video, so that when they open up the WhatsApp, they've got the video of the promo, they've got the booking guide, they've got a little bit of the information. I save all of the quote stuff for the email. But essentially, it's just a template that sits in Outlook for desktop. So you just literally fill in the gaps and tailor it.
Is WhatsApp business number, is that like a different number to your number?
Yeah. So
I love that because I'm a millennial and I get scared of answering the phone when it's an unknown number. So I'd love to have one where I know that it's a work thing coming through.
Calling you. No, it's it's having just that separation, but also for the clients, because they get a response. Like, it depends. If I want to look at it, I can look at it. If I don't, I don't. So if I'm having one of those bad mental health days, well, I'm like, right, I just can't deal with clients. I just hide the phone somewhere so I don't look at it. But in the same breath, if they've got a bit of information that doesn't require an email coming in and out, that's already saved us so much time. Plus, the client thinks that you're at their beck and call the whole time, but actually, it's up to you whether you look at it or not. But I think it's just useful because you can see if they've seen your message. They've got your number straight away in their phone, so they're more likely to save it. And also the fact that you can send PDFs via WhatsApp is just a game changer, really. So I would just say, it's free, WhatsApp for Business, but you should get a separate number. And, there's some really good business rates out there. So 3 have got one for £6 a month, and you can use your phone in the EU as well. So you get data with it as well. So when I'm off on my travels and backpacking, I've got the business phone there. So not only can I then call them from abroad as well on WhatsApp, I've got the data. So that if I'm sat on a beach in Turkey somewhere, I can just go, hey, here's your info. So yeah, that's definitely something people should do.
Yeah, I love that. Just want to go back quickly to your website. When people fill out, what kind of things have you got on your website as like what is like the criteria to fill out your contact form?
So the main thing is obviously name, contact number, where the event's going to be. They can put a little message in there if they want to. I don't ask them for budget. I know some people do. I think it's that kind of trade-off between making sure that they actually fill the damn thing out, because I think if you put too much info, it's a bit of a turn-off for them.
Yeah.
But essentially, my website, I spent a lot of time to really optimize it, because behind the scenes, you can obviously see what people are doing. And also, if you're using really high quality images on your website, it's a really bad idea, because the loading time from when they land on it, they turn off. You can see that they've left, and it can diagnose the fact that the pictures are too high quality. So even if you put not so good pictures
you can swear, man, don't worry.
Even if you put lower quality pictures at the top on your banner, it's just making sure that the key thing that you want them to see, in our case, is the promo video. And then just lots of touch points on there so that they can click inquire and it brings them to the contact form. One thing that blows my mind is I spent thousands of pounds on promo, right? You know, best possible, whatever I could afford, beg, borrow, steal, barter, everything. The thing that gets us booked is basically we did a wedding at a venue in Brighton, got chatting to the lovely videographer, just a bit of camaraderie between providers at a wedding. And I just noticed she was doing a little bit of handheld filming. And I was like, oh, is it possible that I might be able to acquire some of your lovely videography to, I don't mind paying you for it. And she's like, well, look, I've got a few clips. She said, they're not amazing, but she said, you can certainly use them. It's just, I've got a standard sort of release form and just a small nominal fee to use the footage. I think it was something like 90 quid, but that 40 seconds is what gets us booked. 40 seconds of me dancing with the client, high-fiving the kids, out in the audience with the microphone. That's what gets us booked.
Yeah. The like top wedding bands, if you look at their Instagrams, every single wedding they've got a videographer with them, not the wedding's videographer. They have a videographer with them at every single wedding, and using the clips and, as you said, dancing with the clients.
That's what they want.
Yeah, that's great, man. That's a great little tip. And again, back to, was it last week's episode or whatever, one of your lead generation points is networking as well, and stuff like that is just great. Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. 1 in 5 of the people that book us, either somebody from their wedding will book us or that client will book us again. So we've got corporates that we've been doing, like Enterprise Rent-A-Car, for example. We've now been booked for the 2nd year running for their corporate event. And I think a lot of it is because we're quite easy to deal with and they trust us not to bleep it up. And I think that just shows that actually that networking, i.e. making sure that you've got your business cards on you at the venue in your back pocket, because, we're always asked for a business card every single event. We could work the room a bit more probably, but I find that in general, even when we haven't handed out business cards, they've gone to the party organizer and asked for our details that way.
Yeah.
Which is really nice. And the fact is that really the more that you do that, overall your advertising costs are going to come down because you're going to have to invest less in paid advertising. But I would say that that's probably the most effective thing that you could do in a function band is actually pay for advertising.
Yeah, okay, let's get onto that, man. I don't know that many people do paid advertising, and I've mentioned on here before, I do plan to have a whole episode on some of that. I've got someone that I've contacted, and hopefully that'll be coming up soon. But every person that I've spoken to that has done it, it works for them, and they don't use a ton of money. But I'm not sure exactly if they know how they figured out how to do it. I'm sure that you probably do know a little bit, but let's go back to the start with what online advertising are you doing?
Let's talk about Google, because Google is the most complicated, like Google Ads, so pay per click is the most ridiculously complicated. It's like torture, like going through that process, because not only is it difficult to get your head around how the bastard thing works, you've got to then, it evolves every single month. Something new is added and it changes. So how I would approach that is that I originally, through one of my contacts that I met through the Songwriting Academy, I had a really good friend who did marketing for like a big company. So he knew how Google Ads worked. So I was like, look, is it possible I could just get an hour of your time? I don't mind trading with something else. He was like, sure, I just want to help you anyway. So he just went through and he's like, look, don't use their standard template that because you have basic and advanced when you go into it. He's like, don't use the basic thing because it just doesn't have a clue who you are. It just thinks that you're selling, girl shoes or something. Yeah. So he told me just sort of like how to go in, and I would say the basics to intermediate of it. Now, when you're spending, let's say a couple of £100 a month, Google will assign a strategist for you so that they will talk you through all of the technical stuff. Bear in mind, it is like having a conversation with a computer. I'm not stupid, right? Sometimes I don't have the world's best attention span, but Jesus, it's the most complicated thing. But I would say 25% of the Google inquiries that come in will book. So they know they want a band when they're going to Google. They're not like on Facebook or Instagram. They might think they want a band or they've seen something they like. With Google, they want you. So you've got that in your back pocket. And another thing I would say as well is that the amount of bands that aren't on Last Minute Musicians, it just blows my mind. Like, it's such a small fee to pay to get listed on there. And the amount of inquiries that come through is crazy.
Is it quite saturated on there? Maybe that's why people get put off of it?
I've never had a bad experience with it. I assume people just don't want to pay to put a listing on it.
Well, yeah, there's that as well. I think a lot of people are scared to invest any money into this.
Yeah, but this is the thing. It's like, do you want to do it full time or do you want to be a hobbyist? It's like, to me, it's binary. It's like you can't expect to ace it if you're not prepared to throw some money at it. And I think what scares people is that they think that it's a risk that they're going to lose their money out of it. But I think if you can work out how effective something is for you, it's less scary. So, for example, I recently signed up with Hitched, who it's specifically for weddings. It hasn't been amazing so far, but there are bookings coming through, and it's a different thing to try. And I'm at least going to try it for a year and see if it works or not.
I think that's the key for these things, man. You can't just like dip your toe in for a month and be like, oh, it didn't work. It doesn't work. It just means like you have to adjust, and time as well is a big factor in these things.
Do you know what I think it is as well? I think people think they're going to have to reinvest their gig money that they've earned into it. And I think that's the biggest misdemeanor in all of it, is that I think that people should be looking externally to fund these things. So even if you're borrowing money from a bank or getting funding from an organization, I think they have to get out of that mentality that they're going to have to reinvest their hard-working gig money. They should be looking externally for it. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So is it just Google ads that you're focused on, or do you do like Meta, Facebook ads, Instagram ads and stuff as well?
And answer to that question, every single damn thing I can do to get bookings in. So I would say Google and paid advertising is probably the most effective. However, 1 in 5 of the bookings is from a third-party agent. So that would be Entertainment Nation, it could be Function Central, any of these agents. The best thing that people can do is basically get listed on every single site. And, I know it's time-consuming, but I spend probably about maybe 1 day a week hustling new agents. So I'm literally phoning them up. I'm messaging them on Facebook. I'm like, have you checked this out? Blah, blah, blah. I'm sure I've annoyed so many of these agents, but the thing is, I've got probably about 40 active agents as well sourcing bookings. So it's not just paid advertising. The one thing where I buck the trend is that I don't see any benefit in things like Instagram and Facebook. It just has never, ever worked for us.
Yeah, and that's an important point. Like, I feel like that's the easiest way into these things at the moment. Like, but not every strategy works for every single person. You have to find what works for you.
Sure,
that's an important point.
but it's also evolving. So whereas about 5 years ago, everything was Google is now, when there was that uptick of COVID weddings, there was that wonderful golden era where the inquiries were just flying in and we were getting all of the kind of delayed weddings and parties. What's changed now, that whole landscape has changed. And actually, Google, as great as it is, I'm moving away from it because essentially I'm still paying the same amount, but I'm not getting the same amount of bookings from it. Mm-hmm. In fact, I'm now looking more into what I would call, I don't really come up with a name for it yet, but basically network of stuff. So for example, hitting up party planners, venues, just any other vendor that could potentially re-recommend you. I don't understand why people, when they've played at a venue, don't send an email to the venue to say thank you to the staff. Hey, if you've got a suppliers list, could you add us on it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, great little tip, man.
Yeah, that has been incredible because that, again, they're fresh in your mind because they've met you. They might have had a bit of a laugh with their staff. It's things like that they know that you're easy to work with, that you don't blast through their sound limit, you don't damage their venue. They want to work with you again. So that's another thing that you could potentially look at.
Awesome, man. So we're moving towards the end of the show now. Is there anything that we haven't covered yet that you'd love to go into before we kind of move on?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. So I think the real heart of a really good party band are the people that are in it. And one of the things that I probably attribute the fact that we're doing so well is the fact that I've got 3 other musicians in this band that work really, really hard. They all make an effort to go out and talk to the client. And a lot of it is things that we've got, there's a few tools and things that I think people would find really useful. I send out a band sheet when I book the band, so it has very clear where the venue is, how much fuel they're going to get paid, when they're going to get fed, how to invoice me. It's all on one sheet, and it's something that goes out to any depths that we use as well. And I think the one thing that is really, really important is just getting the right team of people, because, I've got these 3 other musicians behind me that I trust 100%. And I think that, as long as the people that work with you, if you're managing a band and you've got other musicians, you have to have that mindset that you're not managing them, you're serving them, and you're making sure that they're happy and they're getting paid, because they are 3 people that are selling your band, or however many people in there. So it's so important that they know where they've got to be, what's expected from them, but also that they're happy, because if they're not happy, they're not going to sell what you're doing. So I just think that's really important. That I guess probably in my experience, having the right musicians on board is like really, really important.
How did you guys meet?
So this is really funny. So at BIM, our drummer James has had some incredible gigs. So he's gigged with Beyonce and Kelly Clarkson. Wow. So we were at music college at the same time. I didn't even know that he was going to join the band, which is hilarious, because I was co-managing it at the time. But our bassist and guitarist, the bassist was teaching our guitarist, unbeknown to him, before he joined the band. So there's all these wonderful little kind of organic roots that are at the heart of it. And, bear in mind, we went through several iterations. So we were originally a 5-piece indie band, but I'm not an indie singer, I'm a pop singer. So I was trying to put on this kind of indie persona, and it just wasn't me. So after COVID, we rebranded we were originally Audio Riot. And I felt it sounded a little bit aggressive for corporate and weddings, so decided to rebrand it as the Fireflies party band. Then organically, we found ourselves wearing the Hawaiian shirts. It became our look. Another thing is, as well, is that we've got an acoustic and party duo version of the band, the Busketeers. So that's pitched when the client doesn't have the budget for the 4-piece. We can just go in with that. Just trying to think if there's anything else on my list.
That's a great little tip, though. Like, it's great. It's good to have like different levels of packages, so people you can fit different budgets. So, like, if you're just going in with this is the one thing we do, this is the one price for it, there's no wiggle room, then you're going to lose a lot of gigs that way, I think, and lose some people. Because if you the other way, if you have a higher package, you're going to lose a lot of money from people that would have paid for that higher package as well.
But you know what? I know it sounds. I can tell when someone's going to book us and when someone isn't from what they put on their contact form. So
I know what you mean, man. I know what you mean by that.
If somebody puts in there, oh, can you let me know the price for this? It's like, oh, okay, you can't afford us. But then, like, sometimes if they've put something in there, look, we love your vibe, we think you're really fun, 9 times out of 10 they're going to book us. But the one thing I don't wiggle on is fees. Like, I'm very clear, this is what we charge. And, you know, it's kind of being confident enough to say there isn't a negotiation on this rate. This is, you know, we're one of the most busy bands in the area. We can afford to charge these rates. And, you know, it's scary to have those conversations, but it's like, at the end of the day, like, I value what we do. We've been doing it for years. Like, we love what we do. It's important that we're paid in accordance with it.
That's it, though. It does come with confidence and time and experience, and being busy enough that you can say no. You don't have to do the bill paying work. You're not desperate for the money. You can turn stuff down. And if they can't afford you, then they can't afford you.
What really gets my goat is when I get an inquiry in for the summer and it's like a charity event. So it'll be on like the busiest summer wedding day. And they're like, oh, hi, it'd be great exposure for you to come down and play our charity event for free. And it's like, oh, so you're going to get the caterers to come and feed you for free, are you? Are you going to, you know, get your venue for free? It's like, do you even realize that, like, you know, this is our full-time job and you somehow think that you can just ask people to give you something for free? It's like, welcome to the world as it is today. It doesn't work like that.
It's always the people that want to pay less as well will be the most demanding and the worst to work with. So it's just your best. If you get any sort of red flag when people fill out your contact form or get in touch, it's so worth just saying no.
So when we were talking about this podcast, one of the things I thought would be funny to talk about is like when the client wants to try and choose a set. And, you know, with these types of clients, like, it's really important to listen to them to find out, because sometimes when they're a control freak or you're getting that vibe from them, there's something else going on. So it might be there's some sort of family issue in the background. Like recently, one of the clients had the Markx company pull out. And, you know, they were from quite sort of like a senior position in a job, you know, certainly to be able to afford our fees. But it was more of a case of, you know, just reassuring people that you know what you're doing. And actually, the songs that they're putting in there, whilst they might be ones that you would really enjoy to hear, if you want to keep people on the dance floor, it's a different set of coordinates, unfortunately. But I'm very much clear. The band choose a set. You're welcome to veto a couple of songs. You're welcome to suggest a few. We'll learn the first dance or a special song. But you can't choose the running order, nor can you choose, you'll curate the set. It's not a menu in a restaurant. Mm-hmm. I always say, look, if you went to go and see Coldplay play, you wouldn't have that same kind of, you know, discourse with them.
Do you ever get any pushback from clients with that?
No, because I've got a template to deal with it, because I've had to deal with it so many times over the years when they get a bit handsy. And there's another story about clients getting handsy that I might tell you later. But essentially, they, you know, you can kind of tell when they're a bit like, oh, how many songs are in a set? That's your biggest giveaway that they're going to try and pounce and try and take over. But I think having like, you know, like a template which basically says, look, you know, whilst it would be amazing that you could do this, the reason is that we've got transitions between songs. We've got medleys. We've got things that are rehearsed to the beat. The lights are programmed into these songs. So, you know, whilst we won't play anything that you hate, but bear in mind that the people that you've got coming to your wedding, you want to keep them on the dance floor. And, just having that conversation that trends change, things go out of fashion. And if you play anything slow, people just leave the dance floor. So, yeah.
I think that's it. It's you're when you're selling your service, you're selling the show, not just we're come and play some songs. You're selling a whole show. And that it just screams that you're like good at what you do for a start, and you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I don't want to come across as really difficult. And I just say, look, I don't want you to think that we just don't want to play stuff that we don't want to play. But in all honesty, I look over at the other three sometimes on a gig. So I'm out there in the audience with the radio mic doing all this dancing with them, being an absolute loon. And then the next song will come on and it will be something like Dancing in the Moonlight. And I look over and I see our bassist Greg and I watch his eyes just sort of go like this. And what I'm witnessing is a slow death of his soul as this song comes on. And that's why actually sometimes we take stuff out that we just absolutely hate because we can't sell that energy of songs that we just... Because the energy isn't there, you're not enjoying it, so the client's not going to enjoy it. And, I've got to think about, the happiness of the people that I play with. And it's really important that we, are engaged and you're showing that you're enjoying it. So sometimes some of these songs go on the scrap heap because we just don't want to bloody play them anymore.
I think that is important, man. You've got to enjoy what you do, right? Otherwise, it's not going to last.
One tiny little tip that I just wanted to put in there, which is if you're let's say you're the band manager and you're the one doing all the booking as well as performing in the band, the biggest thing that I learned that took the stress out of running a band, because it is feast and famine, we always say it, because obviously, there's no secret that I'm paid more than my colleagues because it's my band and I'm running it and I'm paying all of the outgoings. With the fee that I take from it, pay myself as a player and pay myself as a manager. Now, I don't have to pay myself those fees at the same time. So what I would suggest to people that are doing it is if you know that February is coming up and if you know that November is coming up, pay your management fees to yourself in those months. So I've got a business account where all the deposits live, where all the payments are coming in and out. And that's one of the key things is to actually, because you're still doing the admin throughout the year and then you still getting a payment when you've done the work. So you still get the kind of reward recognition thing when you get paid. But that has single-handedly kept me afloat, firstly, in times where it's been difficult, but has also allowed me to thrive a bit more because I'm not just sailing off August and September or June and July. I've kind of just got it. And I think that's, if you've got the ability to do that and take the pressure off.
That's a great little tip, man. I think that possibly at some point in the future I should do a whole episode on just like finance and stuff like that. But yeah, that's awesome, man. So before we kind of move on to the last bit of the show, is there anything else that you wanna go through that we haven't discussed yet?
A few things that are really handy, knowing your audience. So I went through on my wonderful little HQ document a little profiling exercise on who was booking us. And lo and behold, it was women between the ages of 25 and 40 mainly that were booking us. And I don't know if maybe you kind of look at what you're selling and it's for men in a man band and it kind of makes sense. But I guess really when we did the promo, we took that into consideration, those kind of profiles. We didn't want to just write off other segments, but, we are fortunate that we are booked from, corporate parties and, our little golden sort of bracket of society that are booking us. But I wouldn't say, make all your decisions based on that, but that has influenced how we've branded and marketed ourselves with that in mind, i.e. songs, what we wear, things like that. It's just something to put into consideration, really. And I think apart from that, I would just say treat your band, if you're running your band as your business, treat it like it's a living entity. So you have to tend it, you have to feed it, i.e. you have to give it some investment, have a routine. Like, I get up, I'm a bit of a late riser, but I'm lucky I have my weekdays free most of the time to do what I love doing. And I think having a routine, having days where you're doing a sales day, having days where you're doing an admin day, have a day off, very, very important for your mental health. Keep an eye on your social battery, because that is the hardest thing for me. I have ADHD. And I've done a string of 3 or 4. I'm like a zombie.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other thing as well. It's like, know your limitations as well. It's like, I can't give at the rate that the clients receive. It's just not possible. So it's kind of like, make a little bit of space in your diary for you to die at the end of it, is what I'm saying.
That's so good, man. This has been such an important episode, I think, and there's been so many good little nuggets in there. But now I would love to hear about some of your best gigs, worst gigs, or just some funny stories. You got anything cool you've got to want to brag about? What have you got for us, man?
Let's start with the good ones to begin with. So the best gigs that we love doing is when people have parties at their house. So it's mainly when people have, like, unfortunately, it's people who are a little bit more to do. But playing in people's houses and that vibe, they just want you to come along and have a good time. There has been a few times where between sets, the client's been like, come in the kitchen, do some shots. And I'd got to the second set and I'm like, oh my God, I'm absolutely steaming. How am I going to do this? So there's that kind of, they don't have any boundaries, unfortunately. So I would say that's the fun ones. And also, I have to say a lot of the corporates, they really do look after you. So that if they're doing like a 3-course meal, they include the band on it, they give you a little table. And I just think there's something to, I never take that for granted. I always just think that that's a real, it's a privilege to be treated like that too. And, when people really do value you as people, and I do think a lot of this job is actually, engaging with people, and, you're there to uplift them, to make them have fun. Some people have, you don't know what's going on with people's lives, and, you have that one opportunity to come along and lift people's spirits and give them permission to be an absolute idiot. And I just think that's a really, those are the good things about the job. I think probably some of the real fun ones that stick in my mind have been, we did a King's Cross station takeover with Subway. So they had a whole day of basically us doing party band sets. I got up on stage with Barry from EastEnders and did a duet, bit of karaoke.
Yeah.
And we were dressed up in silly outfits, and we had people coming. The footfall coming in and out was crazy. But I did think, and always when I'm gigging, I have a little moment, and I'm like, you used to sit in an office staring out the 4th floor window, questioning your life decisions, and it's a Tuesday afternoon, and you're in the centre of London, dancing, singing, doing what you love doing. You have that kind of wow moment, and I just think that it's like I never take that for granted. I'm always just like, it blows my mind. I didn't think it was possible to be able to make a living out of it. So, I think that those are some of the best. G Live, we've played there a couple of times for Enterprise, and again, it's a huge venue. Again, they look after you really, really well. So those are your kind of wow moments. We played the National Gallery, which was another cool one. Should we go on to the worst ones?
Yeah. What have you got?
Okay, well, there's two that really spring to mind. Actually, the irony is that the first one was nothing really to do with us performing, but we'd got booked for a wedding in Sussex in the middle of nowhere. No reception, just, standard marquee. And all of the power supply for that marquee was running off the same supply. And you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
Now, at the last minute, my colleague was like, oh, you know, they want the first dance basically streamed, I forgot to say. So I'm like desperately trying to get onto Spotify to get the track downloaded. So there was no reception. And then, you know, obviously it's brown trousers time here. So I managed to sort of like jog all the way, sort of like miles and miles out to get the track downloaded, you know, hot fitting it back, hot summer's day. Anyway, they're all in there, and you know, there's a group. I mean, there's a lot of them from a certain reality TV show, which I won't tell you, but you can imagine the type of person that was there. They've got certain demands, but we were getting ready to do the first dance, and I'd got it finally downloaded and ready, but there was just some kind of gremlin in the mix. So first of all, the power started cutting out. Then the microphone stopped working, and it was like everybody was looking at me, and I'm like, oh my God, I just want to die. And then so I go to announce the first dance and I double clicked on it, and somehow it opened up the queue on Spotify instead of the first dance. And it was Sweet Caroline.
Oh, man.
Obviously, they were like, everyone was like, yeah, Sweet Caroline's their first dance. Right, looking at me. And I'm just dying. And everyone's looking at me. And I just wanted the ground to open up a swimming hole. So quick thinking, I was like, right, get it off. But stupidly, these are in the days of where Bluetooth connections were a thing. So then the Bluetooth connection went, and I'm like, fuck! So I quickly managed to drag out the wires bag, the jack lead, and put it into the actual speaker. And finally the first dance started playing. But her face.
Yeah, I can imagine. Thunder face.
She was not happy at all. And
did she say anything to you after?
I mean, basically, they wanted to do a couple's song afterwards, like basically to a backing track. And then she made a comment about it in front of everybody. And obviously I was just humiliated. Like I just didn't, honestly, it was one of the worst days of my life. And I thought, do you know what? Why am I doing this? Like, I've done everything to make this work today. I've come in early. I've got, you know, all of these little bits and pieces. I thought, do you know what? I'm going to talk to her face to face, like a man. So I just said, look, can we just have a chat? So we went outside, and I was just got on a level with her. And I was like, you know, I know you've been planning this day all of your life. But I was like, things happen, like technical problems happen, you know, it shouldn't have happened. And, you know, it's just unfortunate. But I said, I'm a human being. And I was just like, I would not have done that to you for the world. But it's like at that moment, I felt about this big.
Yeah.
It's like, in all honesty, we could leave now because that's not nice behavior. And she was like, yeah, but, you know, you have to understand, I had it in my head it was going to be like this. And I think I managed to sort of push a button or what have you. And I just said, you know, everybody was laughing about it, and it's something they'll remember. And then I don't know what it was. It just flipped in her. And she just took my hand and she's like, I'm so sorry for doing that to you. Let's go out. And actually the second set was incredible. Like it just turned around the whole thing. But I think that was kind of using your instinct and also getting on a level with people, but also knowing what you can and can't tolerate. I mean, there's no right or wrong solution. Don't use Bluetooth.
Yeah.
Get the damn track on your laptop. Make sure that it's wired up properly, and then these things won't happen. And also question if the whole marquee is running on the same power supply, and you shall not have experienced such a horrendous ordeal. So yeah, there's another one which I think is important to share, but it's not a nice one actually. But
we keep doing this, ending on horrible stories at the end of the show. But no, yeah, please
I know, but I just thought, you know, go out with a bang. So we did a wedding, and the normal kind of camaraderie, dancing around the room, clients having a great time. And, you know, a lot of this job is managing drunk people. I mean, the things that have happened during gigs, I've had people put their arms around my neck when I've been trying to sing. I've had to stop the band. At one point, I got groped, like full on groped, not just a little casual pat on the bottom. We're talking like full on, handsy. And, there's been times where I've had to stop the band and be like, you've got to get this person out of here. Because this strange continuum where people just suddenly, all of the laws of public society go out the window. But again, it's times where I felt quite intimidated. I mean, had it been a female singer,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Someone would have been arrested. But I just think, I'm not saying that men have it harder than women, but some of the things that there's been times where like I've felt really, really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And, just to kind of like remedy that with something nice is that, having a close-knit band and people to watch your back, they're always looking out. So if somebody puts a drink on the speaker, you've always got somebody who's got your back. And I think, one of the things that we do now is that I have an actual break on site because I'm dealing with the client all the time. I'm there longest from everybody. They cover me so that I can have a mental health break. And it's during the first and second set. And that has really transformed things for me, actually having a break.
What does that look like? Just some time alone or?
Yeah, just like get away from everybody. Like there've been times where I've gone into the men's toilet, got in the cubicle and slammed the door shut, locked it, and basically sat there rocking on the stool. But I think it's knowing your boundaries and knowing your weaknesses, because I can't give at that rate. I can't. And I think it's okay to actually go and rock in the toilet stall if you have to.
Yeah.
It's important. And, the band is so good about that. So, to finish on a funny story though, because obviously you've had the light and shade and the worst first dance known to history. There's one where we got into this venue and there was a green room behind the stage and we found a wheelchair. So, of course, if you're 4 guys in a wheelchair, you're going to want to have a little go on it. So, unbeknownst to us, we didn't think the client was anywhere near us. So I'm scooting along on this wheelchair, legs like flailed out. And then the bride just suddenly appears from nowhere. And I'm like, how am I going to explain this? And she's like, get off. I'm like, oh, God. She's like, I want to go. So then we're scooting the bride around the venue, like wheelchair. And then there's this kind of video clip. I don't know if it's somewhere on our social media, but it's basically 1 a.m. in the morning during the DJ set at the end. And it's the bride basically scooting around to drum and bass in the wheelchair. And then there's this just wonderful moment where the wheelchair just goes like this. And then the wedding dress flies up over and she just collapses on the floor, and there's this drum and bass track going on. And it's just like, this is it. You've arrived.
That's some good stuff, man. So this has been such a great episode. I've loved it. Again, a super important one, I think. So sort of to end the show, I want to start a new section, which is the quick fire round. Some quick questions, some quick answers, just whatever comes to your head, I guess, because you haven't been... you don't pre-know about these questions, obviously. Anyway, here we go. Quick fire round. What is the most effective thing you've done to market yourself or your band?
Promo material. So, Google promo material, paid advertising.
Nice.
And pub gigs.
What have you learned in the last 3 months that you wish you knew 3 years ago?
Take a break.
If you were just starting out now, what would be the first thing that you'd do?
One thing per day to get you closer to your goal. Get some investment. Get the best possible promo that you can do.
Nice. What's your biggest mistake? What's the biggest mistake you've made, in your business, and what did you learn from it?
Coming on this podcast, I think. I think there's two. The wrong musicians. So booking people that either as deps or, just people that there are, unfortunately, a small minority of musicians out there that don't care. They just want to get the best paid gig and they'll try and dep things out. Yeah. So I would say actually booking the wrong people for the gig is another thing. That always scared me a lot because I didn't come from a music. I wasn't predominantly a musician. I had the business side of it, but I think that scared me quite a lot. And I made the mistake of trusting too many people. Now I've got a very small pool of deps that I use because they don't let me down.
Yeah, you've got trust in them.
There's one big thing. I think it is a mistake, actually, but in the early days of function work, I was in an 80s tribute act, and I'd come from BIM, so there is a bit of a mentality, and again, it's not a criticism to anybody who's been to music colleges, but you have this kind of inflated sense of your own abilities when you leave these institutions, because you just think suddenly you're going to get signed and you're going to be rich and, doing all of these things. And I came into this tribute act just thinking I could wing it. So I hadn't really learned all of the songs. I hadn't really done my homework. I didn't know all the structures. And Jack, I was out of my depth. I was just completely... I don't know. I've just been a few times in my life where I've just frozen. And I got fired for it. And actually, as horrendous as it was and humiliating as it was, I was like, I need to learn the damn songs. You can't just rock up and just think that you can blag it. So I think that's probably the biggest mistake is failure to prepare is preparing to fail.
Yeah, it's a good lesson to learn as well. Yeah. So lastly, do you use any specific tools or apps or anything like that you'd recommend?
So WhatsApp Business. So get that downloaded on a separate number. So you've got a dedicated number for the band. Canva is great for socials, bits and pieces. Templates. So what I do, really good tip, is to get in your Outlook signature, if you've got the Microsoft Office, is to actually put your client responses into the signatures. So you can just literally go bing, and it's got the quote ready to go out. I think also, so for singers, there's a really good playlist on Spotify. I'll have to send it to you, but it's vocal warm-ups as a playlist. Mm-hmm. So that's really great. I mean, I do that a couple of times on the gig day. So that's a good one for singers. But I would just say, if people think there's suddenly going to be this wonderful tool that's going to make your band experience incredible, I think it's all about processes rather than tools. Yeah. Because you can do anything with any set of tools. The main thing is make sure you've got a good sales funnel and make sure that you've got a marketing plan. You know who you are, know what you do, and the tools are just secondary, I would say.
It's good stuff, man. There we go. That was one of my favorite episodes, man. Honestly, I think there's so much good stuff in there. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us. I need to get out of this shed because it is about 35 degrees in here, I think. But yeah, man, thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
So there we go. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. Big thanks to Ian again for coming on and sharing his knowledge with us. So I just quickly wanted to mention that I'm always on the hunt for new guests. So if you have an amazing story that you'd like to share or a particular topic that you think this audience would find interesting, or if you know someone that you think would be a great guest, then please get in touch. You can do that by emailing me at feedback@thefulltimefunctionmusicianpodcast.co.uk, or on Instagram you can find me at InFocus Recording Co. And that's it. Take it easy. I'll catch you next week for episode 31.